Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee, Books, and Rain, where we talk about as many literary things as I can possibly fit into the time space that I have. And today, I want to talk about a book that my friend Lee recommended that we read for a book club episode, a podcast episode that we will be book clubbing together for Books Are Magical. And that is a podcast I am a co-host of. So please find it on any of your local podcasting platforms. It is really fun. It is just me and usually like my two girls. I'm just one of three. So the other two girls sometimes they fill in when I can't be there. Anyway, Lee, one of my other friends, he is going to do an episode with me on this book, Hyperion by Dan Simmons. And I had not read this book before, and when he recommended it, I said, okay, great, that sounds cool. And then he's like, I feel like you're being sarcastic. And I was like, no, I looked it up. I had not read it. It's a Hugo Award winner, and it's cool, and it's sci-fi, and it's spacey, and it seems awesome. So let's talk about Hyperion, which is the Hyperion Cantos number 1. And if you don't know what a cantos is, then it is a section into which long poems are usually divided. Now, what does that mean with relation to Hyperion? Is it a poem? No. But it is done in a very similar style called a framing style that Chaucer did his Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales was originally a long-form poem. To my knowledge, it's not an epic poem. It is simply a long-form poem that is done in what's called frame style. So within the work, there are individual stories that make up the entire body of the work. I will talk about Canterbury Tales after I've talked about Hyperion, but we had to talk a little bit about the format to understand why it's called Cantos number 1, Hyperion Cantos number 1. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the Wikipedia, so you can either get information from me and the Wikipedia, or me and the Goodreads. But I will say, the Goodreads gives this 4.3 stars, and it's been out since 1989. So it's been really well received. And again, if my screen just got bright, it's because I just opened a Wikipedia page that is white, and now I have white light shining in my face. So, you're welcome. Does it make me look pretty? Moving on. I know my hair is a mess. I haven't even gotten to do my workout yet. So after a workout, maybe I'll, wash it and figure out what's happening with it. Hyperion is a 1989 sci-fi novel by American author Dan Simmons, coming from Wikipedia, so just kind of giving you guys a little, I'm not plagiarizing, I'm reading. This is the first book of the Hyperion Cantos, and yes, it did win a Hugo Award for Best Novel. So, congrats to him for that. Honestly, it was incredibly well done and well written. And we'll get into why. So, the plot features multiple timelines and characters, and again follows the structure of Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. And the second book in the series is called The Fall of Hyperion. So, within this particular book, there are technically 7 individuals that we start out with. They are going on a pilgrimage. They are considered pilgrims. They are going on a pilgrimage to Hyperion, to the time tombs, in order to each do a certain thing. Each of them has a goal for why they're going to the time tombs and why they're going either back to Hyperion or why it's their destination. It's got a weird structure inside of it, which means time is kind of moving in an odd manner. In some ways it's moving backwards, and it's guarded by these these legendary creatures, these creatures that are almost looked on as godlike, called the Shrike, which was very, very interesting. I will say some of the stories were really great in my personal opinion. Some of the individual stories didn't hit me in the right place, but I'm going to kind of go through each of them a little bit just so you can kind of get the idea. Then I'm going to switch over to Canterbury Tales and just kind of give you guys a general idea of how Canterbury Tales is broken down. And if you guys were looking forward to that, why I put it in such parallel. So part one for this particular book is the priest's tale. And again, they drew numbers in the very beginning to determine who was going to tell their story as they make this voyage across space to Hyperion. There's kind of a reason, I guess, at one point or another they determined that they can't be put into like a hypersleep or something like that until they get there. So they are each going there in order to do some sort of quest or task or journey, whether spiritual or physical journey. That's what pilgrimages are intended for. So they decide that they're each going to tell the tale of why they were chosen to join this pilgrimage. And we start with the priest, and technically it's not his story he tells, but another story's tale by Paul de Rey. And Paul de Rey has been exiled. He was also a priest. He's been exiled onto Hyperion, and he kind of falls in with the Bakura. The Bakura were a culture of these people. They called themselves the 70, so 70 of them. And they were obsessed with the cross or the cruciform. And so Paul de Rey, the preacher, the priest, I guess I should say, priest, he's a Catholic priest. He kind of tries to fit in with them. He can't really escape Hyperion, so he's kind of like, if he goes too far, there's like burning forests and all this sort of stuff. So one day, the Bakura, like, they kill his kind of his friend, Paul de Rey's like friend, and they say, well, you're a man of like the cross, of the cruciform. And he's like, yeah, I'm a priest. And they let him live because they think he's part of like their culture. Well, apparently one of them sees him bathing, which is very uncommon, and he's just simply bathing without a shirt. I think he has his trousers on, but he doesn't have a shirt on. And they realize that he's not part of the cruciform or the cross. And so now that they have to determine whether they're going to initiate him into their society or whether they're going to kill him, unalive him. And so they take him to the temple, and they take a crucifix off the wall of this temple that they have kind of hidden, and they place it, and he puts it on. And the next morning, this cruciform has almost embedded itself into his body and has spread like nerves and like almost roots inside of his body, making him part of this culture. He can't go too far anymore from the culture because he is now of the cruciform. He is now bonded to it. And so this is kind of where his journal ends, and where the actual pilgrim of the Hyperion like pilgrimage kind of ends his story, because he's like, this is not my story to tell, this is his story that I'm telling. And so Priest Hoyt is the one who's actually on the ship. We later come to find out, and I don't know if this is, but I don't want to, I feel like this book has been out for so long that if I give you spoilers, like, I don't think I'm spoiling too much. But I also kind of don't want to give each of the nuances away of what's happening in each story. So let's just say that Priest Hoyt does have a reason why he's also going to Hyperion that is more personal. He has been there once before, and this is how he got the journals, but now he also has to go back to do something else. So we're going to leave that there with Father Hoyt's motivation for returning to Hyperion, because we have kind of reached the end of his tale. The second tale was one that I felt didn't really hit me as well as I liked it, or as I wanted it to. It was called The Soldier's Tale and the War Lovers. So Fedman Kassad, he is a colonel in one of these military forces, and he has this kind of on again off again lover, Monada, but he doesn't know her name for a very long time, and she doesn't show up all that frequently. And over the course of kind of him doing all this various things as kind of a war hero, he she comes in and out of his life only to find out that we believe she is not who she claims to be. And we realize that Kassad's motivation for returning to Hyperion is to try to figure out and possibly destroy the Shrike. And so I think that's kind of like he's also trying to prevent war because he thinks that's what it's planning. So just kind of like that's an overview. I know that one's very short, but that's why it's very short is because I feel like a lot of it was really more about just like the relationship building and stuff, and it didn't really hit me super great. I just understand why he felt like he needed to go back. We also have the Poet's Tale. Again, the Poet's Tale kind of is what I would think calling back or hearkening back to Geoffrey Chaucer's Cantos, is because Chaucer did put himself, Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, because Chaucer did put himself into the Canterbury Tales, and he did put himself as kind of a poet, as a writer in that particular tale. However, Silenus, he is, it's so very interesting because it's like he's a poet, but then he goes through some pretty tragic sort of mental illness sort of thing. He kind of gets brain damaged and he has to relearn to speak and things of that nature, where then he becomes he relearns to speak, he learns to rewrite, all this sort of stuff. He becomes a multi-billionaire because he writes a poem, he writes a book that takes off, and now he's looking for his muse, and he can't wait to get back to Hyperion because he feels like the only reason he can get to Hyperion, or he feels like getting to Hyperion is the only way he's going to be able to finish his poem and to finish his life's work. So that one's actually pretty good. The Scholar's Tale was the one that hit me the hardest, in my personal opinion. And that one was about a Jewish professor and his daughter, Rachel. And I don't want to give too much away on this one because that's why it was so incredibly hard hitting, is because what happens to Rachel while she's an archaeologist on Hyperion is why Weintraub needs to go back to Hyperion and try to set things right before Rachel passes away. And he, like, I don't know, it's just that fatherly love. He's had a dream that if he brings her back, then, like, hopefully something can happen if he makes a sacrifice of her. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but in the Bible, there is, I think it's Isaac gets told by God that, okay, you sacrifice your son to me. And then, of course, at the final moment, as Isaac is doing that with the intent that he's going to do this, out of his faith, then God stays his hand. Well, that is a very similar dream to what Saul Weintraub is dreams with regards to Rachel. And so now he's got to go back to Hyperion to try to see if he can actually save her before time runs out. And that's pretty sad. That was a pretty sad one. And I think that's probably one that hits a lot of the other characters in the novel also pretty hard, because towards like the epilogue, I think we also get some of the other characters kind of agreeing that should they be able to make a deal, the deal should be for Saul to have his more or less wish satisfied. And to kind of wrap up these final two, just really quickly. I like the detective tale. Her name is Braun Lamia. She's a private investigator, and she's hired by almost like a what's it called, a cybrid. It's kind of a human body, but it's controlled by an AI core. So it feels flesh and bones, but there is a core inside of it that is AI. That used to be, the core is based on a person. The body didn't belong to anybody. It was not like recycled or anything like that. But ultimately, Johnny is killed. He is the cybrid, and his consciousness is transferred into Lamia, and now reveals that they've got to go back to Hyperion in order to well, she'd been granted asylum by the Shrike under the condition that she'll embark on this pilgrimage. So, lots of fun things in that story. And then the final one is the Consul's Tale, which I really didn't understand too much, other than he seems to be telling the story of two individuals, Marin Aspic and Siri. And I don't know. That one was just didn't hit me as well either. So I'm going to say that some of them do and some of them don't hit me incredibly well. The final epilogue is very Wizard of Oz. They've kind of they've reached their destination. They've kind of reached Hyperion. So the pilgrims decide to continue their journey to meet the Shrike, and it kind of ends as they're approaching the tomb, and they're literally singing "We're off to meet the wizard," which has this unusual glow and all this sort of interesting stuff. So that is why I am definitely looking forward to reading the next book to finish off this series. The characters are really well done. Each story is very unique in its own right, has its own personality. It definitely represents the person who's telling it very well, which, going to Canterbury Tales, is exactly what Chaucer did with Canterbury Tales. So Canterbury Tales was written a very long time ago, and I'm just about to Google it. But I don't even have to Google it. Here, I'll just click on it, like right here, where it just says Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. And Wikipedia takes me to that page just so I can give you a brief little synopsis. But Hyperion, let me give it 5 stars because honestly, kept me super engaged. Really liked the stories, really like where we're going with this, and can't wait to read the second one. I definitely think you have to read the second one in order to kind of figure out what's going to happen, because I still don't know what's going to happen, and I am on the edge of my seat. Canterbury Tales has been out since 1400, between 1387 and 1400. If you haven't gotten to read Canterbury Tales, that's okay. A lot of people never get around to reading the Canterbury Tales. I will say it's actually pretty funny. I would just go ahead and pull it up on Audible because it's free. You don't even have to use a credit for it. Go ahead and grab you the Audible copy because, again, free. Let someone else read it to you. And I do actually have a physical copy as well. I just think I left it on the shelf in there. Yeah, I didn't bring it in here with me. But it was originally done most likely as oral verse that someone told orally, but it is a collection of 24 stories that runs over 17,000 lines written in the Middle English by Geoffrey Chaucer. It is considered his magnum opus, and it is written in some verse and some prose. So I will tell you, he didn't finish it, and you will encounter, if you ever pick it up, several stories that are unfinished. Especially there's one in there by the cook, who you literally get about that much content from the cook, and you get a little kind of preface for the story, and then you get like a paragraph, and then we move on to the next storyteller. He has all of these individual people who, from all walks of life of society, whether they be the summoner, the pardoner, nuns, knights, we've got prioress, and what do we have? Squires. We have, like I said, about 24 different stories, all encompassed within the Canterbury Tales. Again, he didn't finish it, so we don't have the full thing. And it is unclear as to what it was going to look like. We do know that at the very beginning of the tale, very beginning of the Canterbury Tales, the host of the group who are traveling to Canterbury, who are making this pilgrimage to Canterbury, tells them that each of them will give a story going and each of them will give a story coming. Well, we only really get a story approximately from them going, but we never get the secondary story of them coming back. And so that's kind of one of the questions that's often asked is it finished? And popular belief is that it's technically not. Some are just fragments, and we can tell by the beginning couple of lines that it probably should have been longer, but it just didn't get flushed out. And I know you're probably like, okay, well, what does this have to do with Hyperion? Well, the same way that Hyperion focused on the scholar's tale, the priest's tale, the consul's tale, and that sort of thing, we also have those same sort of titles for this particular novel as well, this particular tale as well. The knight's tale, the miller's tale, the cook's tale, the man of law. And it really does kind of give a good glimpse into how each individual of society kind of had their different perspectives on the culture going on. Now, in Chaucer's book, each story was meant to kind of one-up each other. Each story was supposed to be told to kind of like one-up the next one. The Hyperion, they're really not trying to one-up. They're really just trying to tell how they came to where they are. I like the thought of them being pilgrims as being on journeys. Now, I will just say, from my perspective, a pilgrimage does not have to go anywhere. And actually, when I was Googling that as well, because I was kind of curious, it can be just a mental journey. It can be a physical journey. It can be an emotional journey. It's whatever sort of journey you want to take yourself on. Most cultures do embrace a pilgrimage, and most religions as well, but religion does not have to be a part of a pilgrimage. It can just be simply spiritual to you in whatever you are trying to do for yourself in whatever way that means. So religion does not have to be part of it, but religion can be a part of it, and a lot of religions have pilgrimages as part of their religious parts. I am very bad with figuring out what that word is. I know there is a phrase for that. Anyway, so I don't want to go too deep into Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Like, again, it is considered Old English. It's been translated a ton of times. You can probably find a million different books. Go to a local used bookstore. You can probably find 17 copies of it. I think it's fascinating. I think it's funny and fun because if you ever read it, it is not a serious tale. It is literally people telling stories and kind of one-upping each other on what is going on in these stories. Because you get the knight's tale, and then the miller, he wants to jump in and tell his tale, which is kind of bawdy and raucous and all this sort of stuff. So you do get, for being as old as it is, you actually get some humor in it. And I think we often forget that we didn't just invent humor in like today's era. It's been around since people knew how to write and tell stories. So thank you so much for tuning in. This one was a little bit longer than most of my other ones, but I kind of am talking about two different books. And go check out Hyperion by Dan Brown. Go check out Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. If you really want Cantos, Ezra Pound has that as well. I keep saying it, it's just not the word I'm looking for. I have a master's degree in literature, and I mix these things up all the time. I just say the wrong words because they're all running around in my head, and some of them just try to just jump out. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. Please like and subscribe. Please help me grow this channel. Please share with your friends if you think that they may enjoy it. And I will see you guys on the next page. And I'm also going to try to do better with social media stuff. So Thank you. And if I reach like 250, I think I'm going to do a book giveaway. So, I would literally either go out and buy a book for somebody, or I will send you like a Barnes & Noble e-gift card or something. So, that is going to be what's up. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.